At Thanksgiving dinner, my daughter-in-law spread 3 color-coded folders across my late wife's tablecloth. "We've already worked out how the family assets should be divided," she said, pointing to the value of my house, my savings, even my truck, as if I were already dead. My son wouldn't look me in the eye. He only muttered, "Just hear her out, Dad." I smiled, ended dinner, and made one call. By Thursday afternoon, they were pounding on my front door. Their old key no longer worked, and that was only the first thing I had changed. Before we go any further, I just want to say how grateful I am that you're here with me today. Drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from, which city, which country. I love knowing who's in this community with me. This is Silent Sweet Revenge, and I'm glad you found us. This story contains fictional elements added for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real names or places is coincidental, but the lesson it carries is worth every minute. The turkey had been in the oven since 7 that morning. I know because I woke before sunrise, the way Eleanor and I had done together every Thanksgiving for 31 years, her at the stove, me handling the bird, the two of us working around each other in a kitchen too small for 2 people who both had opinions about how things should be done. 5 years since she passed, and I still woke at the same hour. Some habits outlast the people who made them. By 4 in the afternoon, the whole house smelled like her. I set the dining room table with the good china, the set we bought at a yard sale in 1994, which Eleanor hand-washed every single piece of for 25 years without once putting a plate in the dishwasher. I stood in the doorway and looked at the table when I finished. Eleanor's chair sat at the far end, empty. I had not moved it. I never moved it. Brian's car pulled in at 4:45. Mason and Lily hit the front porch like a small storm, 2 9-year-olds calling Grandpa before the door was fully open. I caught Lily under the arms and swung her once. My back protested, and I ignored it completely. Mason grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the kitchen, already asking if there was anything left to stir. "The gravy," I told him. "Don't stop moving it or it'll stick." Brian came in behind them, shaking the November cold from his jacket. He looked tired, not the tired of hard work, but the tired of a man who owed more than he earned and had stopped expecting that to change. He hugged me with one arm and said the house smelled great. "Your mother's recipe," I said. He nodded and looked away. Kendra came in last, dressed sharply for a family dinner, pressed blazer-heeled boots, hair done with a precision that felt more professional than festive. She kissed my cheek quickly, set a bottle of wine on the counter without asking whether I wanted it opened, and moved into the dining room with her hands trailing along the backs of the chairs. Dinner went the way it always went. Mason narrated his recreational soccer league with the intensity of a championship recap. Lily had discovered horses and described them with the conviction of someone who had found a calling. Brian ate steadily and said little. Kendra asked polite questions and checked her phone twice. When I brought out Eleanor's pumpkin pie, Mason's eyes went wide. Lily asked for the piece with the most whipped cream. For a few minutes, everything felt the way it was supposed to feel. Then dessert ended. The kids went to the back bedroom with Mason's tablet. Brian reached for his wine glass, and Kendra reached for her bag. She did not stand to help clear the plates. She unzipped a structured leather portfolio and removed a stack of papers, color-coded, tabbed, clipped into 3 neat sections, and placed them on Eleanor's tablecloth with the practiced confidence of a woman presenting at a business meeting. My chest tightened. The feeling was specific and physical. "We've spent the last few weeks putting some things together," Kendra said, sliding the first section toward me. Her voice was warm in the careful way of someone who had learned that warmth was a useful tool. "We thought it made sense to have a real conversation about the family's financial future. The first section was a property valuation. My house. Maple Drive, Levittown. Estimated current market value $680,000. Comparable sales analysis attached pulled from Nassau County listings. The second section listed my savings accounts, my pension, the truck. The third section was titled Early Family Distribution Plan. I kept my hands flat on the table. I read the first page slowly. Then I looked at Brian. He was looking at his wine glass, his thumb moving in slow circles around the base. He did not look up until I said his name, and then his eyes met mine for only a moment before sliding toward the window. "Dad," he said quietly. "Just hear her out." 4 words. That was all. But they landed below my sternum and stayed there because I understood immediately what they meant. A man who disagreed with what was happening at his father's table would have said something, anything, that put distance between himself and the plan. Instead, Brian said, "Hear her out," which meant Brian already had. I did not raise my voice. I pushed back from my chair, slowly walked to the entryway, lifted Brian's jacket and Kendra's coat from the hooks, and carried them back to the dining room. I set them over the chair nearest the door. Kendra stopped mid-sentence. "Dinner is over," I said. I walked down the hallway to the small bedroom. Mason and Lily were laughing at something on the tablet, their faces open and unguarded, completely unaware of what was happening 20 feet away. I crouched down to Mason's level and put my hand on his shoulder. "Hey," I said. "I love you both. You know that." He nodded. I held them both for a moment, a second longer than usual, and then I walked them back to the dining room where Brian stood by the door with his jacket on, and Kendra had already zipped the portfolio shut. They left without another word. I stood at the front door and listened to the engine fade down Maple Drive. Then I went back to the dining room, sat down at the table my wife and I had shared for 30 years, and looked at Eleanor's empty chair. My hands were steady, but I was not the same man who had started cooking that morning. I washed every dish by hand. I did not need to. The dishwasher had worked fine for 11 years, but standing at the sink with hot water running over my hands was something Eleanor and I had done together after every holiday meal, her washing me, drying the two of us, talking about nothing in particular, while the kids were distracted and the house was still warm. Tonight I did both. Washed and dried. Stacked everything back in the cabinet in the order Eleanor had always kept it, plates largest to smallest bowls nested just so. When I was done, the kitchen looked exactly the way it always looked after Thanksgiving. Except Eleanor was not here, and my son had just told me to listen to his wife explain how to redistribute my life. I turned off the kitchen light and walked into the living room. The lamp by Eleanor's reading chair was still on. I had clicked it on out of habit when the sun went down, the way I always did, the way she had always liked it. I stood in the middle of the room and looked at the chair at the small table beside it, with the coaster she had used and the paperback she had been reading when she got her diagnosis and never picked up again. My throat tightened until it ached. I sat down on the couch across from her chair, leaned forward with my elbows on my knees, and pressed my hands against my face. Not crying? Not yet. Just holding the weight of the evening somewhere it would not spill. The grandfather clock in the hallway marked 9, then 9:30. I kept thinking about Brian's face when he said it. Just hear her out, Dad. Not angry, not ashamed, not even uncomfortable in any visible way. Just careful. The face of a man delivering a message he had agreed to deliver. I had raised that boy. I knew every version of his face. That one had been practiced. How long, I thought. How long had they been sitting across from each other at their own kitchen table talking about mine? I got up eventually, because sitting still was making it worse. I walked down the hall to the bedroom, our bedroom, though I had stopped saying that out loud, because it made people look at me with an expression I could not stand. I sat on the edge of the bed on my side, not Eleanor's, and reached over to open the nightstand drawer on her side, the way I sometimes did when the night felt too large. Eleanor kept things in that drawer. Had kept things. A tube of hand cream, a small flashlight, a paperback bookmark she made from a grocery receipt. I never moved any of it. Tonight, at the very back of the drawer, my fingers found something I did not remember being there. A small envelope, the kind that came with greeting cards, sealed and worn soft at the edges from being handled. On the front, in Eleanor's handwriting, the careful, slightly tilted cursive she used when she was writing something she meant, were 4 words. For Walter. When needed. My hands were not steady anymore. I turned the envelope over twice before I opened it. And even then, I did it slowly, the way you open something you understand you cannot unopen. Inside was a single folded piece of notepaper, the cream-colored kind Eleanor bought in packs of 50 from the drugstore and used for everything. I unfolded it. The handwriting was hers, but thinner than I remembered the letters, more deliberate the way her writing had looked in the last months, when her hands had started to tire quickly. She had written this when she was sick. She had known that there would be a night like this one, and she had written something down and left it in the dark at the back of her nightstand drawer, and trusted that I would find it when I needed to. Help Brian when he needs it. But never let him think that our love means he owns what we built. This house is yours, Walter. Not a gift waiting to be collected. Yours. I read it 3 times. Then I sat on the edge of our bed in the dark with Eleanor's notepaper in my hands and felt something shift inside my chest, not breaking but settling. The way a heavy thing settles when it finally finds solid ground. She had seen it. Years before I let myself see it, Eleanor had already seen it, and she had loved Brian anyway, and she had loved me enough to leave a note at the back of a drawer for the night I would need it most. I pressed the paper flat against my knee, folded it carefully along its original crease, and tucked it into the breast pocket of my flannel shirt directly over my heart. Then I stood up, walked to the small desk in the corner, where Eleanor used to write her lesson plans back when she still taught. And I pulled out the yellow legal pad I kept there for grocery lists and phone numbers. I sat down, and I wrote one name at the top of the page. Raymond Cole. Below it I wrote Monday. First thing. I looked at those 2 lines for a long moment, tapping the pen once against the pad. My chest still ached. My eyes were hot in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. But my hand was steady, and the name on the page was clear, and that was enough for tonight. I clicked off the desk lamp and went to bed. I did not sleep for a long time, but when I finally did, it was the sleep of a man who has made a decision. Frank Dawson showed up at 8 the next morning with 2 large coffees from the diner on Hempstead Avenue and a paper bag that smelled like bacon and toasted bread. And I felt my chest loosen just slightly at the sight of him standing on my porch in his old Carhartt jacket, with his collar turned up against the November cold. Frank and I had worked side by side on the shop floor at Garrison Mechanical for 22 years. He was the kind of man who did not ask if you were okay when something was clearly wrong. He just showed up with coffee and waited for you to talk. We had buried Eleanor together. He had sat in the front row at the service and not said a single unnecessary word, and I had loved him for it. "You called me last night," he said, stepping inside when I opened the door. "I didn't realize I had," I said. "You didn't. But you would have eventually, so I saved us both the time." He set the cups on the kitchen counter and pulled the bacon sandwiches out of the bag with the matter-of-fact efficiency of a man who had been feeding other people through difficult mornings his entire life. "Sit down, Walter. Tell me what happened." So I told him. I told him everything, the portfolio, the 3 color-coded sections, Kendra's voice moving through numbers and timelines, like she was presenting at an open house, and Brian's face and those 4 words. Just hear her out, Dad. I told him about the chair and Eleanor's notepaper, and the name I had written on the legal pad before I went to bed. Frank listened the way he always listened, completely still, both hands wrapped around his coffee cup, eyes on me the whole time. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, and then he leaned forward and set his cup down on the table. 3 color-coded sections, he said, with a comparable sales analysis. That's right. Walter. Frank's voice was careful the way it got when he was about to say something he knew would land hard. That is not something you put together in an afternoon. That is not even something you put together in a week. That kind of document, the property valuation, the asset breakdown, the distribution plan, that takes research. That takes time. He looked at me steadily. How long do you think they've actually been thinking about this? The question sat between us like something with weight. I pushed back from the table and walked to the small desk in the corner of the living room, the one Eleanor had used for lesson plans. On the shelf beneath it sat a laptop, an old one, a slim silver machine Brian had used during the 2 months he and Kendra had stayed here after their basement flooded 3 years ago. He had left it when they moved back home, said he'd pick it up, never did. He had used it briefly last spring when he came to help me with the gutters, logged back in then, and never logged out again. Ida Brian's old laptop is still here, I said. He left it logged into his cloud account. I never touched it. Frank stood up from the kitchen table and came to stand beside me. Then touch it now. I opened the machine. The screen came to life slowly the way old electronics do, and I navigated to the cloud storage folder Brian had used for work documents. The files loaded in a list, sorted by date, modified, and I scrolled down through budget spreadsheets and insurance policy templates and client folders until I saw it. Hayes Family Asset Review, XLSX, date created March 14th. 8 months ago. My hand tightened on the edge of the desk until I could feel the wood pressing into my palm. I opened the file. The spreadsheet that loaded was familiar. The same structure as the papers Kendra had placed on Eleanor's tablecloth last night. The same categories, the same formatting. But the numbers were different. In the version Kendra had shown me, the column marked Walter remaining funds, post-transfer, showed a figure that was uncomfortable, but livable. Enough for a modest apartment, enough for groceries and utilities, and the small dignities of a man who had worked for 32 years. In this version, the original, the one that had not been adjusted before printing that number, was significantly lower. The difference had been redistributed upward into the columns marked Mortgage Payoff and Private School Continuation Fund and Vehicle Upgrade Reserve. Frank read it over my shoulder without speaking, which for Frank was its own kind of statement. I scrolled to the bottom of the spreadsheet where the notes section sat. Most of it was logistical timelines, talking points, questions to research. But the last line, typed in plain text at the very bottom of the document, made the muscles in my jaw go tight enough to ache. Dad won't need truck if he downsizes. I straightened up from the desk. My back was stiff and my hands felt strange, not shaking. Not cold, just present in a way hands usually are not, like my body was paying attention to something my mind was still catching up to. They didn't decide this at Thanksgiving dinner, I said. My voice came out steady, which surprised me. They've been building this for 8 months. Frank picked up his coffee cup from where he'd left it on the desk and took a long, slow drink. Then he looked at me over the rim with the expression of a man who is angry on your behalf, but knows that his anger is not the most useful thing in the room right now. The version she showed you last night, he said. The numbers were softer. Yes. She adjusted them before she printed it. Yes. Frank set the cup down. His jaw worked for a moment. So she's been planning this since March. She had someone prepare a real estate valuation. She adjusted the numbers to make it easier to swallow, and she sat down at Eleanor's table on Thanksgiving and presented it like a business proposal. "That's what happened," I said. Frank pulled out the chair from the desk and sat down in it heavily, the way a man sits when something has taken the steadiness out of his legs. He pressed his hands flat on his knees and looked at the laptop screen for a long moment at the spreadsheet. With its two sets of numbers, the one meant to be shown and the one meant to stay hidden. "Walter," he said finally. "What are you going to do?" I reached past him and closed the laptop. The screen went dark. Outside the kitchen window, the street was quiet. The November sky, the flat white of a day that had not decided yet what kind of day it wanted to be. "I already know what I'm going to do," I said. I just needed to know how far they went before I did it. I picked up the legal pad from the desk. Raymond Cole's name was still there at the top, exactly where I had written it the night before. I underlined it once. Saturday came in cold and gray, the kind of November morning on Long Island that smells like dead leaves and the ocean and something metallic in the air that promises the first real freeze is not far off. I had spent Friday afternoon changing the locks on the garage side door myself. I had the tools, I knew how to do it, and the physical work of it had been useful in the way that physical work always is when your mind will not stop running. I was in the middle of rehanging the front door strike plate when Susan Miller knocked. Susan lived 3 houses down on the left, a retired school librarian who had moved to Maple Drive the same year Eleanor and I did, and had brought us a peach cobbler the first week we were in the house. She and Eleanor had been close in the quiet, undemonstrative way of women who respected each other without needing to announce it. After Eleanor passed, Susan had shown up every few weeks with something from her kitchen, a container of soup, a slice of pie, once a full pot of chili. She said she had made too much, of which we both knew was not true. She was standing on my porch now with a covered plate, and her expression was the careful expression of a woman who had something to say and had been thinking about how to say it. "Leftover pie," she said, holding the plate out. "The pumpkin kind. I made 3 and only needed 2. "Come in," I said. "I just made coffee." She sat at the kitchen table and wrapped both hands around the mug I set in front of her and looked at it for a moment before she looked up at me. "Walter," she said, "I need to tell you something. I've been going back and forth about it since Thursday, and I decided this morning that not telling you would be worse than telling you, so I'm going to tell you." I set my own mug down. "All right." Susan took a breath. "Over the past few months, I've seen Kendra at your house. Not when you're home. In the mornings when you go out to the lake on Tuesdays." The muscles across my shoulders pulled tight. I kept my voice even. "How many times?" "At least 3 that I noticed, maybe more when I wasn't paying attention." Susan's fingers tightened around her mug. "The second time she had someone with her. A man I didn't recognize. He was carrying one of those laser measuring devices, the kind contractors use when they're quoting renovation work. They went inside and were there for maybe 40 minutes. The coffee in my mug steamed quietly between my hands. "She had a key," I said. It was not a question. "She used a key." Susan confirmed. "I assumed you knew. I almost asked you about it once, but then I thought maybe Walter asked her to look into some repairs. Maybe there's a reason. I didn't want to be the neighbor who makes trouble where there isn't any." Her jaw tightened, and something that looked very much like guilt moved across her face. "I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry, Walter." "You're telling me now," I said. "That matters." I stood up from the table and went to the hook by the back door where I kept my spare keys. I had given Brian 2 copies years ago, one for him, one for Kendra, for emergencies the way you do with family. I counted what was hanging on the hook. There were 4 keys. I had given out 2. I was looking at 2. Which meant there were copies somewhere that I had not made, and had not authorized, and had no knowledge of. The tightness in my shoulders moved down into my chest, and settled there like a stone. I picked up my phone and called Carol Bennett. Carol had been a real estate agent in Nassau County for 18 years, and had sold 3 houses on our street alone. Susan had introduced us at a block party 7 years ago, and Carol had been the one who handled Eleanor's life insurance paperwork after the funeral. Not her job, strictly speaking, but she had done it anyway because she was that kind of person. She answered on the second ring. "Walter," she said, and her voice shifted immediately, the professional warmth replaced by something more careful. "I was actually going to call you this weekend." "Tell me about Kendra," I said. A pause. Short, but real. "She came to me about 2 months ago. Said she was helping you think through some options for the property, that you were considering downsizing, and wanted to understand what the market looked like. She said you'd asked her to handle the preliminary research because your knee had been giving you trouble and you weren't up for meetings." Every word landed with a specific weight. "I never asked her to do that," I said. My voice came out quieter than I intended, the way voices sometimes go when the body is working hard to contain something. "I know that now," Carol said, and her own voice carried the particular tension of someone who feels responsible for something they should not have trusted. "Walter, I want to be clear, she never signed a listing agreement. We never had a formal contract. What she asked me to prepare was informal preliminary. But I did prepare it. I put together a market analysis, I pulled comps, I drafted a property description." A pause. "I took photographs of the exterior. She gave me the address and said you wouldn't mind." My hand gripped the phone hard enough that I could feel the edges of the case pressing into my fingers. "She gave you the address," I said, "of my house." "Yes." Carol's voice was tight with something that sounded like anger directed entirely at herself. "I should have called you directly to confirm. I've known you through Susan for 12 years, Walter. I know what your voice sounds like. I should have picked up the phone. Instead, I took her at her word, because she's your daughter-in-law, and I assumed—" She stopped. "I'm sorry. That was a professional failure, and I'm not going to make excuses for it. I'm not calling to blame you," I said. "I'm calling because I need to know exactly what was prepared," Carol told me. "A full market analysis. Comparable sales in the neighborhood going back 18 months. A property description, 4 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, updated kitchen, detached garage, mature landscaping, written as though the house were already on the market. A suggested listing price of $680,000, which matched the number in Kendra's spreadsheet exactly." "Is there a digital copy?" I asked. "I'll send it to you in the next 10 minutes, Carol said. "Walter, she never had the authority to list this property. Nothing was ever filed, nothing was ever published. But the document exists, and you should have it." "Thank you, Carol." I set the phone down on the kitchen counter and stood there for a moment, with my hands flat on the cold tile, feeling the particular sensation of a man who has just watched a picture he thought he understood rearrange itself into something entirely different. Susan was still at the table. She had not touched her coffee since she started talking. She was watching me with the steady, worried expression of a woman who had delivered difficult news and was waiting to see what it cost. "How bad is it?" she asked. I picked up the spare keys from the hook, all 4 of them, and set them on the counter in a row. Then I picked up my phone again and found the number for the locksmith I had used 3 years ago when I lost my keys at the hardware store. "Bad enough," I said. "But fixable." The locksmith answered on the 3rd ring. I told him I needed every exterior lock in the house, rekeyed front door, back door, garage, and I needed it done today. "Can you be here by 2?" I asked. He said he could. I hung up and looked at Susan, who was finally drinking her coffee with both hands wrapped around the mug, and her eyes on me with an expression that was equal parts worry and something that looked quietly like relief. "You did the right thing," I told her. "Telling me." She nodded once firmly, the way people nod when they need the confirmation to be true. Outside the kitchen window, a dry maple leaf skated across the driveway on a gust of wind and caught against the base of the porch steps. I watched it for a moment, this ordinary Saturday thing, a leaf moving in the cold, and felt the stone in my chest shift slightly, not lighter, but more defined. Easier to carry when you could feel its exact shape. The listing document arrived in my email at 11:47. I printed it out and set it on the kitchen table next to the laptop and the 4 spare keys. The evidence was beginning to take shape. The locksmith left at 3:15 Saturday afternoon, and I stood in the entryway for a long moment after his truck pulled out of the driveway, turning the new key over in my hand. It was small and ordinary and cut from blank brass stock, and it was the only key to my front door that existed in the world right now. That fact settled over me with a particular kind of relief. I had not expected something close to what I imagined it felt like to finally set down a bag you had been carrying so long you forgot it was there. I slept better that night than I had in months. Sunday morning, I made coffee and stood at the kitchen window, watching the light come up over the neighbor's roofline, pale and clean, the way late November light is when the sky has gone completely clear overnight. I had one task for the day, and I had been putting it off since Friday, because some part of me already suspected what I was going to find, and knowing a thing and finding proof of it are 2 very different weights to carry. I started in the guest room. Over the past 2 years, Kendra had developed a habit of leaving things at my house. Small things at first, a jacket she said she might need. If it got cold, a pair of Mason's sneakers for when they came to visit, a tube of children's sunscreen in the bathroom cabinet. I had never thought much of it. Families leave things at each other's houses. That is what families do. But standing in the guest room doorway with a cardboard box in my hands, I began to understand that what Kendra had been doing was not the casual accumulation of a family that spent time together. It was something more deliberate than that. There were 2 of Lily's sweaters folded on the closet shelf, 3 of Mason's books stacked on the nightstand, a set of throw pillows on the guest bed that I had not bought and did not recognize in colors that matched nothing else in the room but matched. I realized slowly the color palette Kendra had chosen for their own living room renovation last spring. A scented candle on the dresser, the kind sold in the home goods section of department stores, the kind that makes a space smell like someone's particular idea of what a home should smell like. I packed it all into the box. I moved to the kitchen next. In the cabinet above the refrigerator, where I kept the things I used rarely enough that they did not need to be within easy reach, I found a French press I had never owned, and a set of ceramic mugs with a pattern I did not recognize. In the drawer beside the stove, tucked behind my regular spatulas, was a silicone baking mat still in its packaging. I added them to the box. In the living room, on the shelf beside the fireplace, where Eleanor had kept her collection of small glass animals, there were 2 framed photographs I had not put there. One was a school portrait of Mason and Lily from last year. The other was a family photograph, Brian, Kendra, and the twins in a silver frame positioned at the center of the shelf, where Eleanor's favorite piece, a small blue glass heron, had stood for 20 years. The heron was pushed to the far left corner of the shelf. I stood in front of the fireplace and looked at that photograph in its silver frame positioned at the center of my wife's shelf, and felt something move through my chest that was not quite anger and not quite grief, but lived somewhere between the 2, hot and specific and entirely focused. I picked up the blue glass heron and put it back in the center of the shelf where it belonged. Then I picked up the silver frame and placed it carefully in the box. I worked through the rest of the house room by room, the way I used to audit equipment at the shop methodically, without rushing, checking every space against what I knew should be there, and noting what should not. By the time I got to the small hallway closet, the box was nearly full. It was in the closet that I found the toy bin. Mason and Lily had a plastic storage bin in that closet. Blue-lidded, the kind that stacks full of the toys and games they kept at Grandpa's house for when they visited. Building blocks, a deck of cards, a set of magnetic drawing boards, a few stuffed animals. I had bought most of it myself over the years. It was one of my favorite things about having them here, that bin the way it meant they were expected, that there was a place for them. I lifted the lid to check if anything needed to be returned to them. Beneath the stuffed animals, wedged between a collapsed set of building blocks and the side of the bin, was a small notebook. The kind with a pale blue cover and an elastic band closure, the kind sold in stationery sections everywhere. It did not belong to Mason or Lily. Of all the places in the house, the toy bin was the one I would never have reason to sort through, and she had known that. The handwriting inside was adult and precise. I carried it to the kitchen table and sat down. The first page had a date September 9th and a heading Maple Drive renovation notes. My jaw went tight enough to ache. I turned the page. Kendra had been thorough. There were measurements, room dimensions, written in the clean notation of someone who knew how to read a floor plan, cross-referenced with notes about load-bearing walls and natural light and the placement of existing fixtures. There were paint color swatches taped to one page, 3 shades of warm white with names like antique linen and Navajo white. There were notes about the kitchen cabinet replacement, quartz countertop, farmhouse sink, and about the backyard privacy fence, paver patio, raised beds. And then I turned to the third page and my hands went very still on the table. At the top of the page, in Kendra's precise handwriting, were 2 words that hit me somewhere behind the sternum like a closed fist. Primary suite. Below it were dimensions. I recognized them immediately. The length and width of the bedroom at the end of the hall, the room where Eleanor and I had slept for 31 years, where I had held my wife's hand through 2 long winters of illness, where I still slept on my side of the bed and still left her nightstand exactly as she had kept it. Kendra had measured that room. She had measured the closet space and noted the square footage and written in the margin in smaller letters, natural light, excellent southeast-facing, minimal renovation, needed cosmetic only. I sat at the kitchen table with that notebook open in front of me and felt the full shape of what I was looking at settle into clarity with the particular sharpness of something you cannot unsee. This was never just about money. Kendra did not want the proceeds from selling my house. She did not want to help me downsize into something more manageable. She wanted to move into this house. She had measured my bedroom, Eleanor's bedroom, and decided it would need only cosmetic updates, and written it down in a notebook she had hidden in my grandchildren's toy bin. My hands were not shaking. I noticed that specifically because I expected them to be. Instead, they were flat on the table on either side of the open notebook, perfectly steady, the hands of a man who has just understood something so completely that there is no room left for uncertainty. I closed the notebook. I carried it to the kitchen counter and set it next to the printed listing document and the 4 spare keys and the open laptop with its 2 versions of the spreadsheet, the real one and the softened one, the one meant to be seen and the one meant to stay hidden. I stood in front of that small collection of objects and looked at it for a long moment, breathing slowly and evenly, letting the full weight of the past 4 days settle into something I could carry without it breaking anything. Then I said very quietly, to no one in particular, "How long have you been planning this, Kendra?" It did not come out as a question, because it wasn't one. I made a ham sandwich for lunch and ate it standing at the kitchen counter, because sitting at the table felt like too much. Right now, the table where Kendra's notebook and the listing document and the spare keys were still arranged in their small, damning row. I ate without tasting much and rinsed the plate and put it away. And then I stood there for a moment, with my hands braced against the edge of the counter, looking at the window above the sink at the bare maple tree in the backyard that Eleanor had planted the year Brian was born. It was still there, 35 years old, bigger than either of us had imagined it would get. I went to the hall closet and pulled down the storage box from the top shelf, the one I had not opened in almost 2 years, the one labeled in Eleanor's handwriting with a single word, household. Inside were the things she had kept organized and current for the entire length of our marriage. The insurance policies, the warranty cards, the tax returns going back 15 years, and at the very bottom, beneath everything else, the ledger books. Eleanor had kept a ledger. Not a digital spreadsheet, not a phone app, a series of pale green accounting notebooks, one per year, going back to 1991. Every significant expense the family had ever made was recorded in there in her careful hand. Home repairs, car payments, medical bills, and the other things too, the things that did not have a category, but that Eleanor had tracked anyway, because Eleanor believed that if money moved, it deserved to be recorded somewhere. I carried the stack of ledgers to the dining room table and sat down. I opened the most recent one first, the year Eleanor got sick, the year the entries started getting shorter and the handwriting more effortful, and I found what I was looking for almost immediately. On a page in February, in letters that cost her something to form Brian Roof Repair Contribution, $2,400. I turned back further. The numbers came slowly at first, and then faster, accumulating the way water accumulates in a low place, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily and without stopping. Brian's wedding, my contribution to the venue and the catering recorded in 2 separate entries. The down payment assistance when Brian and Kendra bought their house, a figure that made my chest tighten when I saw it written in Eleanor's hand, because I remembered how long it had taken us to save that much ourselves. The roof repair, the car transmission the following spring. The 3 months Brian was between jobs and called every other week with a specific and urgent number. And I had written the check each time because he was my son, and I did not want him to lose what he had built. The twins' birth hospital costs that their insurance had not fully covered, paid quietly and never mentioned again. 2 years of after-school enrichment programs. 1 summer of soccer camp for Mason, 1 summer of riding lessons for Lily, because they each wanted something different, and I wanted them to have it. The family cell phone plan that I had been paying for 6 years without anyone asking me to stop. I did not add it all up at first. I just read page by page, year by year, Eleanor's handwriting moving from confident and clear to deliberate and slow as the entries approached the end. And I felt my throat tighten with a grief that was specific and layered grief for Eleanor, yes, always, but also something else, something harder to name. The grief of a man looking at a record of his own generosity and understanding for the first time that generosity without boundaries is not kindness. It is an invitation. I found a pen and a legal pad, and I added the numbers. When I finished, I sat back in my chair and looked at the total for a long time. My eyes burned. Not from crying, not yet, but from the particular effort of keeping them open and focused on a number that represented 30 years of quiet, unacknowledged transfer. 30 years of writing checks and making calls and covering gaps, and not once, not one single time, had Brian sat across from me and said, "Dad, I want you to know how much this has meant." Not once had Kendra acknowledged it as anything other than a resource that was available and therefore reasonable to use. I pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes for a moment hard, until the pressure became the thing I was feeling, instead of what was underneath it. Then I pulled my hands away and reached into the storage box for the last of Eleanor's ledgers, the final one, the one from the year she died, the one with the entries that stopped in April and left the rest of the pages blank. The ledger was thinner than the others. I opened it carefully, the way you handle something that is both ordinary and irreplaceable. And I turned to the inside back cover, where Eleanor had sometimes written notes to herself, reminders, phone numbers, things she wanted to remember. There was a small envelope tucked into the back cover, held in place with a strip of tape that had dried and gone brittle at the edges. On the front, in the deliberate handwriting of her last months, she had written 3 words. For Walter. Walter read this. My hands went very still. I had found the note in the nightstand drawer Thursday night. Or I thought I had. But looking at this envelope now, at the tape that had held it in place for 5 years, I understood that there were 2. Eleanor had written 2 notes and placed them in 2 different places, as if she had known that one might not be enough, or that I might need to find them at different moments in different states of readiness. I peeled the tape away carefully and opened the envelope. The notepaper inside was folded twice. I unfolded it slowly, smoothing the creases with my thumb, and I read what Eleanor had written in the careful, costly handwriting of a woman who knew her time was running short and wanted to spend it on the things that mattered. Walter, I've watched you give Brian everything he's asked for and some things he didn't. I know why you do it. I know what it feels like to want your child to have more than you had and to have the means to make that possible. That is not a flaw. That is love. But I need you to hear this. Brian is a grown man. He has a wife and children and a house and a job and a future that belongs to him and Kendra to build. Not to you to fund. The house on Maple Drive is ours, Walter. Yours and mine. We painted every room. We fixed the porch steps 3 times. We planted that maple tree in the backyard and watched it get bigger than we expected. That house is not a resource. It is not an asset waiting to be liquidated. It is the place we built our life, and it is yours for as long as you want it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Not even Brian. I love you. I always will. Eleanor, I read it once, straight through. Then I set it flat on the dining room table and pressed both palms down on it gently, the way you press a hand to something to make sure it is real, and I felt the tears come. Then not the burning, effortful kind I had been fighting off all afternoon, but the quiet kind, the kind that comes when something has been held too tightly for too long, and finally, in the presence of the right words, lets go. I sat at Eleanor's table and I cried for a few minutes for her, for the years, for the boy Brian had been, and the man he had become. For all the checks I had written in good faith that had been received as entitlement for the house we had built together, that someone had measured for renovation without ever asking. When I was done, I wiped my face with the back of my hand and straightened up in my chair. I folded Eleanor's letter along its original creases and placed it carefully in the breast pocket of my flannel shirt next to the first note, so that both of them rested directly over my heart. Then I picked up my pen, turned to a fresh page on the legal pad, and began to write. At the top of the page, Raymond Cole, Monday, 9th a.m. Below it, in a list that grew steadily as the afternoon light faded through the dining room windows, I wrote down everything I needed to do. Every item on that list was a door I intended to close. Every door I closed was one more part of my life that would belong without question entirely to me. All right, Eleanor, I thought, capping the pen and looking at the bare maple tree through the window, its branches dark against the gray November sky. Let's finish this. Garden City was 20 minutes from Maple Drive on a good morning, and Monday morning was a good morning, cold and clear, the kind of December air that made the inside of your nose ache and the sky look like someone had stretched a piece of blue silk tight from one horizon to the other. I left the house at 8:30 with the legal pad, the printed listing document, and all 3 sections of Kendra's color-coded portfolio in a manila folder on the passenger seat beside me. I had called Raymond Cole on Friday afternoon from the kitchen, while Frank was still there, and Raymond had picked up himself, not his receptionist, not his paralegal, but Raymond, which told me he had been expecting the call or something like it, for longer than I realized. Monday morning, he had said without asking what it was about. 8:45. I'll clear the time. Raymond Cole had handled Eleanor's estate after she passed the will, the accounts, the small but careful life she had organized over 30 years of marriage. He was 60 years old, a compact man with close-cropped gray hair and the particular stillness of someone who had spent 4 decades listening to people in difficult circumstances and had learned that stillness was more useful than words in the first 5 minutes of any conversation. His office was on the 2nd floor of a low brick building on 7th Street, with a waiting room that smelled like coffee and old paper, and the particular quiet of a place where serious things happened. His receptionist, a woman named Diane, who had been with him since the early 90s, and who had sent Eleanor a handwritten condolence card after the funeral, brought me coffee without asking, and showed me into Raymond's office at exactly 8:45. Raymond was standing at his window when I came in. He turned, shook my hand with both of his, and gestured toward the chair across from his desk, without any of the social preamble that wastes the first 10 minutes of a meeting. "Tell me what happened," he said. So I told him. All of it. Thanksgiving dinner, the 3-section portfolio. Brian's 4 words, the laptop, and the 8-month-old file. Susan's account of the laser measure. Carol's listing document. The notebook, with primary suite written at the top of the page, and Eleanor's ledger with its 30 years of quiet transfer. I set the manila folder on his desk and slid it across, and watched him open it and read without interrupting him. Raymond read the way he always had, completely carefully, without rushing, his face showing nothing except the slight tension around his eyes that appeared when he was processing something that concerned him. When he finished, he closed the folder and set it precisely back in the center of his desk and looked at me. Under New York Estates, Powers and Trusts law, he said, his voice measured and clear, as long as you are mentally competent and the title to the property is in your name, no one, not Brian, not Kendra, not a court, not anyone can force you to transfer, sell, or vacate that house. The title is yours. The decision is yours. Full stop. I understand that, I said. What I want is to make sure it stays that way, regardless of what they try next. Raymond nodded slowly, the nod of a man who had already been thinking about the answer before I finished the question. Then we restructure. Completely. He opened the legal pad on his desk and uncapped a pen. Walk me through your assets. We worked for 2 hours. The first thing Raymond did was explain the irrevocable trust. Under New York law, he told me a properly drafted irrevocable trust removes assets from your personal estate entirely. They no longer belong to you as an individual, which means they cannot be seized, leveraged, or transferred by anyone, including a court-appointed guardian or a family member with power of attorney, without the explicit authorization of the independent trustee. The house goes into the trust, Raymond said. I'll designate my firm as corporate trustee. That means no individual, not me, personally, not Brian, not a family friend, has unilateral authority over the property. Decisions require formal trustee action. It's the strongest protection available under New York EPTL. Do it, I said. Next was the power of attorney. Brian was currently listed as my agent under a durable power of attorney I had signed 7 years ago, which meant that if I became incapacitated, Brian had the legal authority to make financial and medical decisions on my behalf. Raymond explained this with the careful neutrality of a man who understood why I had done it, and why I now needed to undo it. "I'm revoking it," I said before he finished the explanation. "I'll prepare the revocation document today," Raymond said. Under New York General Obligations Law, revocation is effective immediately upon execution and delivery of written notice. Brian will receive formal notification by Thursday. He paused. "I'll also prepare a new healthcare proxy and durable POA designating my firm as your agent. That way there's no gap in coverage." "Good," I said. "What about the boys, Mason and Lily?" Raymond looked up from his legal pad. Something in his expression shifted slightly. Not softness exactly, but recognition. "What do you want to do for them?" "I want them taken care of," I said. "Separately. Not through Brian, not through Kendra. Directly." Raymond set his pen down and folded his hands on the desk. "A 529 education savings plan," he said. "You open it as the account owner, designate Mason and Lily as beneficiaries. Contributions grow tax-free. When they reach college age, funds are dispersed directly to the accredited institution, not to the parents, not to any intermediary. Brian and Kendra cannot access it, cannot redirect it, cannot close it without your authorization while you're alive." My chest loosened slightly at that. The specific relief of knowing that whatever happened between me and Brian, my grandchildren's future, would not be caught in the middle of it. "Open it," I said. Raymond picked his pen back up and made 3 rapid notes. Then he looked at me over the top of his reading glasses with the expression of a man about to raise something he would rather not have to raise. "Walter," he said, "there's one more thing I need to recommend, and I want you to hear it not as a precaution against your family, but as standard practice in estate restructuring of this kind. Go ahead. Shocker, a cognitive evaluation." He said it plainly without apology. "Completed by a licensed neuropsychologist, documented, signed, and placed on file. In cases where an individual restructures their estate, particularly when family members are being removed from positions of authority, it is not uncommon for those family members to challenge the validity of the decisions by claiming the individual was not of sound mind at the time." The muscles in my jaw tightened. Not because I was surprised I had thought of it myself somewhere around 2 in the morning on Saturday, but because hearing it said out loud made it real in a way that my own private suspicion had not. "You think Kendra will try that?" I said. I think Kendra is smart enough to think of it," Raymond said carefully. "And I think getting ahead of it now before any of these documents are filed is significantly more useful than responding to it after the fact. A current evaluation showing full cognitive capacity completed before the restructuring is essentially unchallengeable." I looked at him for a moment. Outside his window, a December wind moved through the bare trees on 7th Street, bending them briefly and then releasing them. "Who would you recommend?" I asked. "Dr. Patricia Moore," Raymond said without hesitation. "She's a neuropsychologist at Garden City Medical Group. I've worked with her on 3 prior cases. She's thorough, she's credentialed, and she's fast. She can typically fit an evaluation within the week if I call ahead." "Call ahead," I said. Raymond made the note, then looked up. "I'll have the preliminary documents drafted by Wednesday. We can execute everything Thursday morning if the evaluation goes as I expect it to." He paused. "Brian and Kendra will receive certified notice of the trust, the POA revocation, and the 529 establishment by Thursday afternoon." I thought about Brian opening that envelope. I thought about Kendra reading the words irrevocable trust and understanding for the first time that the number in her spreadsheet was not a negotiation. It was a fiction. "Make the language airtight, Raymond," I said. "Every clause. Raymond looked at me over his reading glasses with the level expression of a man who had been doing this for 30 years and had never yet failed a client who asked him to be thorough. "Walter," he said, "when I am finished, a team of lawyers working for a month could not find a crack in it." I picked up my coffee cup and drank the last of it, which had gone cold while we talked, and I did not mind at all. I shook Raymond's hand at the door, nodded to Diane on my way out, and walked down the stairs and out into the December cold. My breath came out in a long, slow cloud in the cold air. For the first time since Thursday night, the weight in my chest felt like something I was choosing to carry rather than something that had been placed there without my consent. I got in the truck and drove home. Before I tell you what Walter discovered about his own son, something that changed everything he thought he understood about this situation, drop the number 8 in the comments right now so I know you're still with me, because what comes next is something I did not see coming, and I don't think you will either. One more thing before we continue the story ahead: contains some fictional elements shaped to carry a message worth hearing. It may not reflect every detail of reality, and if that's not for you, this is a good place to step away. No judgment at all. I was back home by 11 and had just put the kettle on when Frank called. "You got a few minutes," he said. Not hello, not how did it go, just that. Which meant he had something to say that he had been sitting on for a while and had finally decided could not wait any longer. "I've got time," I said. "Come over." He arrived 20 minutes later, and he did not take off his jacket when he came in, which meant he was not planning to stay long. Which meant whatever he had to say was the kind of thing that lands better when you can leave right after. He sat down across from me at the kitchen table and put both hands flat on the surface and looked at them for a moment before he looked up. Dennis Albright called me this morning," Frank said. "You remember Dennis? He worked with Brian at the Merrick office a few years back. They still grab drinks sometimes with a few of the other guys." I remembered the name. Brian had mentioned him once or twice. "Go ahead," I said. "A few months ago, Dennis thinks it was September, maybe early October, they were out with a group. Few beers, nothing serious. And Brian said something." Frank's jaw tightened slightly. He was not a man who enjoyed delivering bad news, but he was a man who believed you delivered it anyway. He said, quote, "If Dad would just sell that house, all our problems would disappear." The kettle began to whistle on the stove. I stood up and poured the water over the tea bag and set the mug down on the counter and stood there with my back to Frank for a moment, looking at the steam rising from the mug. My throat tightened. Not from anger, or not only from anger, but from something more specific and more painful than anger. The particular feeling of a man who has spent several days building a careful story in his head in which his son was weak but not malicious, influenced but not calculating, and who has just watched that story come apart. I turned around and sat back down. "Dennis said it like he meant it?" I asked. "Not venting, not just talking." That's what I asked him," Frank said. "He said Brian sounded certain, not frustrated, not emotional. Certain. Like it was a plan, not a complaint." I wrapped both hands around the mug, even though the ceramic was almost too hot to hold, needing something solid and real under my palms. I had told myself through all of it, the spreadsheet, the listing, the notebook with primary suite written at the top. I had told myself that Kendra was the architect, that Brian had gone along because he was passive and conflict-averse and had learned over 15 years of marriage to let his wife take the wheel. I had told myself that because it was easier, because it left a door open between my son and me that I was not ready to close. Dennis Albright had just shut that door from the other side. "He came up with it," I said, not a question. "Sounds that way." Frank said quietly. Kendra built the plan, but Brian handed her the blueprint. I looked at the framed photograph on the kitchen wall, Brian at 8 years old standing on the running board of my first truck, grinning with all his teeth, one hand on my shoulder for balance. I had taken that photo myself, set the timer run back to stand beside him. We had both been laughing at something I could not remember anymore. My chest pulled tight and sharp, the way it did when something you loved revealed a crack you had not known was there. I stood up, crossed to the wall, lifted the frame down from its hook, and placed it face down on the counter. Not because I wanted to erase it, but because I could not keep looking at it right now and think clearly, and I needed to think clearly. "Thank you for telling me," I said. Frank stood up and buttoned his jacket. He put a hand briefly on my shoulder, one firm press, the way men who have known each other a long time say the things they do not have words for, and then he walked to the door and let himself out. I stood alone in the kitchen, the photograph face down on the counter beside the cooling mug of tea, and I felt the last version of the story I had been telling myself dissolve completely. Brian was not a bystander. He had never been a bystander. He had just been smart enough or cowardly enough to let someone else stand in the front of the room. Tuesday morning I woke up at 5:45 without an alarm. I lay in bed for exactly 2 minutes, looking at the ceiling, and then I got up, made coffee, and sat down at the kitchen table with the legal pad. The list I had written Sunday night was still there, Raymond Cole's name at the top with the line drawn through it. Below it were 6 more items, each one a thread that connected my finances to Brian and Kendra's daily life threads I had let grow for years without examining what they were holding together or what they were holding back. I picked up the pen and started at the top. The first call was to the mobile carrier. I had been paying a family plan that covered 4 lines for 6 years, mine, Brian's, Kendra's, and a data line for the twins' tablet. The customer service representative was polite and efficient, and within 11 minutes, Brian's and Kendra's lines had been separated into their own account, effective immediately with their final billing cycle starting today. The twins' tablet line I moved to my account and kept. That one stayed. I drew a line through item 1. The second call was to the landscaping company, a local outfit called Green Edge, that I had been paying to mow Brian and Kendra's corner lot every 2 weeks from April through November for the past 4 years. The owner, a heavy-set man named Pete, who always left a handwritten invoice in the mailbox, answered on the second ring. I told him I would no longer be covering the service at the Hillside address, effective this billing cycle. Pete said he understood, no problem, he would reach out to the homeowners directly. I drew a line through item 2. The third was the joint savings account, a relic from the year Brian entered college when Eleanor and I had opened it together, so Brian could have access to emergency funds without the friction of a wire transfer. He was 35 years old. The emergency fund had long since become a resource he drew from without asking and replenished without mentioning. I logged into the bank portal, initiated the closure process, and transferred the remaining balance into my personal checking account. The confirmation number appeared on the screen at 8:47 in the morning. Item 3. Line drawn through it. The fourth call was to the elementary school, the front office, a woman named Mrs. Garrett, who handled administrative matters with the particular weary efficiency of someone who had dealt with every variety of parental situation imaginable. I explained that starting this week I would no longer be on the authorized daily pickup list for Mason and Lily Hayes. Their parents would need to arrange pickup or enroll them in the after-school program. Mrs. Garrett said she would update the records. I told her I still wanted to be listed as an emergency contact. "Of course, Mr. Hayes," she said, and I could hear in her voice that she was not going to ask questions, which I appreciated. Item 4. Line drawn. I set the pen down and looked at the list. 4 lines drawn through 4 items, 2 left, and those 2 required no phone calls, only decisions that had already been made and paperwork that Raymond was already preparing. I refilled my coffee and stood at the kitchen window for a while, looking at the backyard. The maple tree Eleanor had planted was bare now, its branches making dark lines against the pale December sky. And I thought about how different a tree looks in winter, stripped of everything, decorative, reduced to its actual structure, the bones of what it was. Stronger than it looked in summer, actually. More honest. My phone rang at 3:14 in the afternoon. Kendra. I answered on the 3rd ring, which I did deliberately, not immediately, which would suggest I had been waiting, and not after so long, that it went to voicemail, because I wanted to have this conversation. Walter. Her voice was tight and fast. The voice of a woman who had spent the past several hours moving from confusion to anger, and had arrived somewhere sharp and controlled. Brian's phone was disconnected in the middle of a client call this morning. His entire plan is gone. And Pete from Green Edge just called saying you canceled the service at our house. What is going on? I looked out at the maple tree. A cardinal had landed on the lowest branch, a red male vivid against the gray, and sat there without moving, as though he owned the branch entirely. I separated our household accounts, I said. My voice came out the way I wanted it to, even unhurried, the voice of a man who had made a list on Sunday night and was simply working through it. You and Brian will need to set up your own carrier plan and arrange your own lawn service going forward. You didn't give us any notice. Her voice cracked slightly on the word notice, not from emotion, but from the effort of keeping the anger underneath it contained. Walter, we have a system. We have arrangements that depend on Kendra, I said, and I kept my voice gentle because I did not need it to be hard. The gentleness was not weakness. It was accuracy. You had 8 months to give me notice about your arrangements. I managed without it. A pause. 3 seconds, maybe 4. This is completely unreasonable, she said, but the certainty in her voice had shifted slightly, the way a wall shifts when something underneath it has moved. The children's pickup schedule hasn't changed, I said. I'm still their emergency contact. That part doesn't move. I watched the cardinal tilt its head on the branch below the maple. Have a good afternoon, Kendra. I ended the call. The phone rang again, almost immediately. Brian this time. I looked at his name on the screen and felt the familiar pull, the 35-year habit of answering when your child called, the reflex that does not care what the child has done or what you now know about him, it just reaches for the phone. I placed the phone face down on the kitchen table. I picked up the pen and drew a line through item 5. Then I sat back in my chair and looked at the list. 6 items, 6 lines, every one of them clean and straight. The cardinal was still on the branch outside. He had not moved. I understood the feeling. I picked up Mason and Lily at 3:15, the same as always. The school let out on Pendleton Avenue, and I had been parking in the same spot in the pickup line for 4 years, third space from the hydrant passenger side toward the curb, so the kids could get in without stepping into traffic. Mason came out first, the way he always did, backpack bouncing, moving at the particular velocity of a 9-year-old boy who has been sitting still for 6 hours and has used up every last reserve of patience. He spotted my truck before he reached the sidewalk and raised both arms above his head like I had just scored something. That gesture hit me somewhere directly behind the sternum. Lily came out 2 minutes later, more measured, holding her lunchbox in both hands, the way she always did, scanning the line until she found me. When she did, her whole face changed, not the wide-open grin Mason wore, but something quieter and more specific, the smile of a child who feels genuinely safe when she sees you. I drove them back to Maple Drive with Mason talking the entire way about a soccer drill he had invented during recess that he believed was more efficient than anything their coach had ever shown them, and Lily occasionally interjecting with corrections to his description that he did not appreciate, but could not refute. By the time we pulled into the driveway, something in my chest that had been tight for 5 days had loosened several degrees. I made hot chocolate and set out the graham crackers Eleanor had always kept in the blue tin on the second shelf, and Mason immediately began constructing something architectural with his crackers, while Lily opened her backpack and pulled out a drawing she had been working on a horse, mostly brown, with a blue mane that no actual horse had ever possessed, but which Lily maintained was realistic for this particular horse. "His name is Captain," she told me, holding it up. "Captain's a good name," I said. "Strong." "He's very fast," she said, returning to her coloring with the focused satisfaction of someone completing important work. I stood at the stove stirring a pot of chicken soup. Eleanor's recipe, the one with the egg noodles and the dill, and listened to the two of them at the table behind me, and felt for a few minutes something close to ordinary. The kitchen smelled like soup and cocoa and the particular warmth of a house with children in it, and I let myself stand in that for a while without thinking about spreadsheets or listing documents or anything that had happened in the past 5 days. Then Lily put her crayon down. She did not look up at me right away. She looked at her drawing at Captain with his improbable blue mane, and her small fingers moved along the edge of the paper in a way that told me she was thinking about something she was not sure she should say. "Grandpa," she said. "Yeah, sweetheart." She looked up then, and her eyes were serious in the way children's eyes get when they are carrying something that belongs to adults and are not sure what to do with it. "Why did Mom say your house is supposed to belong to us anyway?" The wooden spoon in my hand went still against the side of the pot. Mason looked up from his cracker construction with the alert expression of a boy who had just detected a change in the atmospheric pressure of the room. I set the spoon down on the rest beside the stove, turned the burner to low, and crossed to the table. I pulled out the chair beside Lily and sat down so we were at the same level, close enough that she did not have to project her voice. "Where did you hear that, sweetheart?" I asked. I kept my voice the way I wanted it, warm, unhurried, without a single degree of alarm in it, because the alarm was mine to carry and not hers. Lily's fingers moved along the edge of her drawing again. "Mom was on the phone, in the kitchen. I was getting my water bottle from the counter, and I don't think she knew I was right there." She looked at me with the particular earnestness of a child who wants to be accurate. "She said you were being selfish with what's ours." The words landed with a specific quiet weight. I breathed through it, one slow breath in and out while I looked at my granddaughter's face at the small furrow between her brows. That meant she was worried she had done something wrong by telling me at the way she held the drawing in both hands, like something that needed protecting. I reached out and covered both her hands with one of mine. "Hey," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong by telling me that. Okay, that's important. You did exactly right." The furrow eased slightly. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "grown-ups get confused about the difference between what they hope for and what actually belongs to them. Your mom said something that wasn't accurate. That's not your fault, and it's not something you need to worry about." Mason had abandoned his cracker architecture entirely. He was watching me with his chin resting on both fists, elbows on the table, in the posture of someone who has decided this conversation requires his full attention. "Are you and Dad having a fight?" he asked. Blunt the way Mason always was, getting directly to the thing without dressing it up. My chest pulled tight at that. Not from the question itself, but from the fact that he had to ask it, that some version of the tension between his father and me had leaked through the walls of adult life and reached him anyway, the way these things always do with children, no matter how carefully you try to contain them. "Your dad and I have some things we need to work out," I said. "Grown-up things. But here's what I need you both to understand. I looked from Mason to Lily and back. Whatever is happening between the adults in your family, it is not about you. It has never been about you, and it never will be. You two are the part of this that doesn't move. You understand me. Mason held my gaze for a moment, with the solemn assessment of a boy deciding whether to believe something. Then he nodded once firmly and picked up a graham cracker and bit it in half, which was his way of indicating that the subject was settled. Lily leaned over and put her head briefly against my arm. Her hair smelled like the strawberry shampoo Eleanor used to buy in the big bottles from the drugstore. I put my arm around her and held on for just a moment, feeling the small solidity of her, the uncomplicated trust of it, and felt something in my throat go thick and tight. I cleared it quietly and stood up and went back to the stove. The soup was simmering gently. I gave it a stir and added a pinch of salt and listened to Mason resume his explanation of the soccer drill to Lily, who was listening with the patient tolerance of a sister who has heard variations of this particular speech before. Brian arrived at 5:45 to pick them up. He knocked. This time he had always used the keypad before punching in the code and walking in without waiting, but the code no longer worked, and he knew it. I heard the knock, dried my hands on the dish towel, and went to the door. He stood on the porch with his hands in his jacket pockets, looking at a point somewhere near my left shoulder rather than at my face. He had the appearance of a man who had rehearsed several things to say and had abandoned all of them on the way over. "Hey, Dad," he said. "Brian," I said. I stepped back and called for the kids. Mason thundered down the hallway with his backpack and hurled himself at his father with the full-body enthusiasm of a child who has not yet learned to modulate affection based on the emotional temperature of a room. Brian caught him and held on, and for just a moment, his face did something unguarded and real, something that looked very much like a man who understood, however dimly, that he was holding the best thing in his life, and had been doing things that put it at risk. Lily came out behind Mason and hugged her father, and then turned back to wave at me, her drawing of Captain rolled carefully under one arm. "Bye, Grandpa." "Bye, Captain," I said. She laughed. It was the best sound in the world. Brian met my eyes for exactly 1 second before he turned and walked the kids to his car. I stood in the doorway and watched the taillights disappear down Maple Drive, and I thought about how strange it was to love someone and be furious at them and worry about them all at once, how those things did not cancel each other out, but simply existed together, stacked and heavy and entirely human. I went back inside. I was washing the soup pot when the phone rang, the landline, the number I kept for doctors and official business. I dried my hands and answered it. "Mr. Hayes." A woman's voice, professional and unhurried. "This is Dr. Patricia Moore calling from Garden City Medical Group. I'm calling to confirm your appointment Thursday morning at 9 o'clock for the cognitive evaluation. Raymond Cole's office arranged it." "I'll be there, doctor," I said. "Wonderful. It typically runs about 2 hours. Just bring a photo ID." "Understood," I said. "Thank you for fitting me in quickly." "Of course," she said. "We'll see you Thursday." I hung up the landline and stood in the quiet kitchen for a moment, one hand still resting on the receiver. Kendra had no idea I had seen this coming, that I thought was the difference between a plan and a reaction. Kendra had been reacting to what she wanted. I had been planning for what she would do next. I went back to the dishes. Wednesday was quiet in the way that days are quiet before something shifts. I spent the morning in the garage working on a 1987 Craftsman riding mower I had picked up at an estate sale 2 months ago with the vague intention of restoring it. The carburetor needed cleaning, the deck belt was cracked through, and someone had replaced the original ignition switch with a toggle that belonged on a boat. I had the engine pulled by 10:30 and was working through the fuel system with a set of thin picks when my phone rang on the workbench beside me. Raymond. I set the pick down and answered, pulling off one work glove with my teeth. Walter, Raymond said. His voice had a quality I had not heard in it before. Not alarm exactly, but a particular kind of careful tension, the voice of a man who has found something he did not expect to find and is choosing his words around it. I need to tell you something that came up during the title search and asset review this morning. Go ahead, I said. There's a second lien on Brian and Kendra's property. A home equity line of credit opened in September, the same month as the first entry in Kendra's renovation notebook. Raymond paused. Brian's name is on the documents. His signature is there. But the stated purpose of the loan, as described in the application, is home improvement for their own residence. I leaned against the workbench. The garage smelled like oil and cold metal, and outside the small window above the door, the December sky was the flat white of mid-afternoon. What was the money used for? I said. Based on the disbursement records, renovation consulting fees, survey equipment rental, and what appear to be professional photography services. Another pause. The dates correspond exactly with the visits Susan described. The man with the laser measure, the exterior photographs in Carol's listing document. The weight of it settled into me slowly, the way cold settles into a building, not all at once, but finding every gap. Kendra had borrowed against their house to finance the planning stages of taking mine. She had put Brian's name on the paperwork, described it as home improvement, and used the money to pay for measurements and photographs of a property that did not belong to either of them. Does Brian know what the money was used for? I asked. That, Raymond said carefully, is unclear. His signature is on the loan documents. Whether he understood the actual application of the funds is a different question. I thought about Brian at the Thanksgiving table, eyes fixed on his wine glass, saying, "Just hear her out." I thought about Dennis Albright's account of Brian in September, certain, not frustrated, like it was already a plan. I thought about the renovation notebook hidden in the toy bin. Raymond, I said, don't do anything with this yet. A beat of silence. Walter, Brian needs to find this out himself, I said. Not from you, not from me, from her. I picked up the work glove from the bench and turned it over in my hands. If I tell him he'll defend her, he'll find a reason, he always does. My voice came out steadier than I expected, considering the particular dull ache that had settled behind my sternum. But if he finds it himself, that's different. That's something he can't explain away. Raymond was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted slightly, less lawyer, more something else. You're sure? I spent 30 years fixing engines, I said. You don't fix a broken part by replacing it for someone. You show them where it's broken, and you hand them the wrench. Another pause. Then, all right, Walter, I'll hold it. Thank you, Raymond. I set the phone down on the workbench and stood in the garage for a long moment. Both hands braced against the edge of the bench, looking at the disassembled engine in front of me, all its components laid out in order, each one exposed, nothing hidden, every piece exactly what it was. There was something clarifying about that. A machine did not lie about what was wrong with it. You opened it up, and the problem was there, visible, waiting to be addressed. People were more complicated. They hid things in loan applications and renovation notebooks, and 4 careful words at a dinner table. They let other people take the blame for plans they had authored. But eventually, if you were patient, if you did not rush to intervene, eventually, the machine showed you exactly where it was broken. I picked up the fuel pick and went back to work. Outside, the December wind moved through the bare maple in the backyard. I could hear it through the garage walls, a low, steady sound, like the house breathing. She'll show him herself, I thought. She always does. Thursday morning, Raymond's office sent me an electronic delivery confirmation at 9:17. The certified mail had reached Brian and Kendra's address at 9:03. I knew because the tracking update came through on my phone while I was standing at the kitchen counter, drinking my second cup of coffee, and I looked at the timestamp and set the phone face up on the counter and waited. I did not have to wait long. Kendra called at 9:45. I let it ring through to voicemail. She called again at 10:10. I let that one go too. At 10:23, she left a message and I played it once on speaker while I washed the breakfast dishes, her voice fast and sharp, saying words like clerical error and call me back immediately, and this cannot be what it looks like. I dried my hands and did not call back. By 2 in the afternoon, I heard tires on the driveway gravel. I was in the living room when they knocked. Not the electronic keypad beep I had heard 1,000 times before, but an actual knock which told me Kendra had already tried the code and already understood what the silence of a non-responding keypad meant. I walked to the door and opened it. They were both on the porch. Kendra had the legal envelope in one hand, already torn open, the documents inside, partially pulled out and creased from being handled hard. Her face was flushed with the specific color of a woman who had been angry for 6 hours and had organized that anger into something she intended to use. Brian stood one step behind her, and to the left, his hands in his jacket pockets, his eyes on the porch boards. "Walter, this is insane." Kendra's voice was controlled, but her jaw was tight enough that I could see the muscle working beneath the skin. "You've placed the house in an irrevocable trust. You've revoked Brian's power of attorney. You've done all of this without a single conversation." "We had our conversation on Thanksgiving," I said. "You brought spreadsheets." She pushed forward. "Brian is your only son. This trust means he has no say in anything, no access, no—" "That's correct," I said. I reached behind the door and picked up the folder I had left on the entryway table that morning. I opened it and removed Carol Bennett's listing document, the full market analysis, the property description, the exterior photographs taken without my knowledge, the suggested listing price of $680,000, and at the top of the first page in the field, marked listing agent, the name Kendra Hayes. I held it out so both of them could see it clearly. "You had a listing prepared," I said. "Photographs taken, a market analysis completed, a price established, all of it ready to file the moment I agreed to sell." I watched Kendra's face go through something complicated, a flash of calculation, then a decision to deny, then the recognition that I was holding the document in my hand, and denial was a choice that would cost her more than it gained. "All you needed was my signature." Brian's eyes came up from the porch boards. He looked at the listing document the way a man looks at something he cannot immediately reconcile with the version of events he has been carrying, his gaze moving from the paper to his wife and back, his brow pulling together the first visible crack in the careful neutrality he had maintained since Thanksgiving. "Kendra," he said. His voice was quiet. "You had the house listed." "How, it wasn't listed!" Kendra said, turning to him quickly, her voice shifting into the register she used when she needed to manage him. "It was preliminary research. I was being proactive." "Carol Bennett prepared this in September," I said. "The same month as the first entry in the renovation notebook I found in the toy bin." I looked directly at my son. "The same month Dennis Albright heard you tell your friends that if I sold this house, all your problems would disappear." Brian's mouth opened. Nothing came out. His hands came out of his jacket pockets, and he looked at them briefly, as if he had forgotten they were attached to him, then looked back at me with an expression I had not seen on his face since he was a boy who had broken something and could not figure out how to explain it. I reached behind me and picked up the 2 boxes I had packed that morning, the last of Brian and Kendra's belongings that had accumulated in my house over 2 years of gradual occupation, and I set them across the threshold onto the porch boards between us. "Take what belongs to you," I said. "Everything else in this house belongs to me." Kendra stared at the boxes. Then she looked at me, then at Brian, then back at me. The flush in her face had shifted less anger now, more something that looked like the specific discomfort of a person who has just understood that the other person in the room knows more than they thought. Brian looked at the boxes. He looked at the listing document still in my hand. He looked at his wife. For the first time since Thanksgiving, he did not immediately look away. Kendra picked up the first box without a word. She came off the porch in 2 sharp steps, crossed the path to the car, and set the box in the trunk with the controlled efficiency of a woman who had decided that leaving quickly was the only move left that did not cost her something she was not willing to spend. She went back for the second box. Then she got in the passenger seat and closed the door and looked straight through the windshield at nothing in particular. Brian had not moved. He was still standing on the porch, one hand wrapped around the railing post, looking at the listing document I still held in my hand. The December light was going flat and gray, the kind that made everything look a little older than it was, and my son stood in it with his shoulders pulled forward and his jaw working the way it did when he was trying to find words for something that did not have good ones. "Can I come in?" he said. "Just for a minute." I looked at him for a moment. Then I stepped back and held the door. He came inside and stood in the entryway, not going further, as if he understood that the permission extended only so far. I walked to the kitchen table and sat down. After a moment, he followed and sat across from me, the same chairs we had always used, the same table, the same kitchen, where his mother had stood at the stove for 30 years. He pressed both palms flat on the table and looked at them. His hands were shaking slightly, a fine tremor in the fingers that he was trying to hold still. "Dad," he said. "I know I messed up." "Brian." "No." His voice cracked on the word, just slightly, the crack of a man who has been holding something compressed for too long. "Let me say it. I knew about the plan, not all of it. I didn't know about the listing. I didn't know she'd had someone measure the house. I swear I didn't know that. But I knew she was working on something. And I let her." He looked up then, and his eyes were red at the rims, not from crying yet, but from the effort of not crying. "I told myself it was practical. I told myself you'd be better off in something smaller. But I knew, Dad. I knew it was wrong, and I sat at your table and I let her put those papers down, and I said hear her out because I was a coward." The word landed between us with the particular weight of a true thing. I looked at my son, this man who had Brian's 8-year-old face somewhere underneath the tired, compromised face he was wearing now, and felt the complicated architecture of what I felt for him, the anger that had not gone away, the grief for what he had chosen to become, and underneath both of those stubborn and unchanged, the love that had been there since the moment he was born, and was not going anywhere regardless of what he did with it. "The worst part," I said quietly, "isn't that you wanted the money. The worst part is that you started talking about my life in past tense while I was still standing in the room." Brian's chin dropped to his chest. His shoulders shook once hard, and then he pulled them back and pressed his lips together and breathed through it. "Is there any way back from this, Dad?" His voice was barely above a whisper. I reached into my breast pocket and took out Eleanor's letter, the second one, the one from the ledger box, and I unfolded it and set it on the table in front of him without a word. He read it slowly. I watched his face as he did, watched the moment the words reached him, watched his jaw tighten and then release, watched his eyes go bright and full in a way he could not control. When he finished, He pressed one hand over the paper flat, as if he needed to feel it was real. "She knew," he said. "She always knew," I said. I stood up and walked to the door and held it open, not to throw him out, but because some conversations end better in the open air, where there is room for what has been said to go somewhere. Brian rose from the chair, slowly, the way a man rises when his legs are not entirely reliable. He walked to the door and stopped on the threshold, his back to me. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said. Not the reflexive sorry of a man trying to end a conflict. The other kind. "I know," I said. He walked down to his car. Kendra was still in the passenger seat, still looking forward. Brian opened the driver's door and got in, and sat there for a moment without starting the engine. I closed the door. I stood in the hallway and listened to the engine finally turn over and the car pull away, and I folded Eleanor's letter carefully along its creases and put it back in my breast pocket. "That depends entirely on you, Brian," I had not said. Not on me, but I thought it. Friday morning came in clean and cold. I was on my second cup of coffee, standing at the kitchen window, watching a pair of sparrows argue over the empty bird feeder Eleanor had hung on the maple branch. I kept meaning to refill it, and kept forgetting which Eleanor would have found inexcusable when I heard the knock. Not the frantic pounding Kendra had delivered on the front door a day ago. Something different. 3 knocks evenly spaced, the knock of someone who did this professionally, and had learned that the rhythm of a knock communicated something before the door even opened. I set my mug down and went to the door. The woman on the porch was somewhere in her mid-40s, dressed in a dark blazer and slacks, despite the cold, with a lanyard around her neck, carrying an ID badge and a leather portfolio tucked under one arm. Behind her, the December morning was perfectly still. "Mr. Hayes." Her voice was measured and professional, without warmth, but also without hostility. "I'm Janet Morse, Adult Protective Services, Nassau County. We received a report expressing concern about your ability to manage your own affairs and living situation. I'm required to conduct a welfare check." A brief pause. "I apologize for arriving without calling ahead. The nature of these visits is typically unannounced." I looked at her badge. Nassau County Department of Social Services. The photo matched her face. "Of course," I said. "Come in. Can I offer you coffee?" She blinked just slightly, the micro-expression of someone who had expected a different first response. "Thank you," she said. "That would be fine." I led her to the kitchen table, poured a second mug, and sat down across from her, the way I would sit across from any guest. Janet Morse set her portfolio on the table, opened it to a fresh page, uncapped a pen, and looked up at me with the careful neutrality of a professional who had learned not to arrive at conclusions before the conversation. "Mr. Hayes, can you tell me your full name and date of birth?" I told her. "Can you tell me what day it is today?" "So Friday, December 5th, I said. 2025. "Can you tell me your current address?" I gave it to her. She wrote each answer down in neat, unhurried strokes. The report we received indicated some concern about recent sudden behavioral changes, specifically alterations to your living arrangements, changes to financial accounts, and modifications to your property. She looked at me carefully. "Can you walk me through some of the decisions you've made in the past week?" "Gladly," I said. I walked her through every decision in order with the reasoning behind each one. The Thanksgiving dinner and the spreadsheets. The irrevocable trust and the POA revocation explained with enough legal specificity that she wrote more quickly. The lock change, the account separations, the canceled services. I explained each one clearly and without agitation, the way I had once explained equipment failures to plant managers who needed to understand what had gone wrong and why before they could authorize a repair. Janet Morse listened without interrupting. When I finished, she looked at her notes for a moment. Then she looked at me. "Mr. Hayes," she said carefully. The report characterized these actions as signs of cognitive decline and impaired judgment. I anticipated that characterization, I said. I stood up, went to the counter and retrieved the sealed envelope Raymond had messaged me about. Thursday evening, Dr. Patricia Moore's completed cognitive evaluation report, finalized and signed 2 days prior at Garden City Medical Group. I set it on the table in front of Janet Morse. She opened it. She read it the way she had listened completely without rushing. The evaluation was 14 pages. She read all of them. When she closed the report, she set it down with a precision that suggested she understood its weight. "Your score on every assessed domain is within normal range," she said. "Memory, executive function, processing speed, verbal fluency." She paused. "There is no clinical basis for concern about your cognitive capacity." "No," I said. "There isn't." Janet Morse closed her portfolio and capped her pen. Her expression had shifted slightly, not unprofessional, but human in a way it had not been when she arrived. "Mr. Hayes, I want you to know that I'm required to file a report regardless of outcome. This visit will be documented." "I'm counting on that," I said. She looked at me for a moment with the particular attention of someone recalibrating their understanding of a situation. "You were expecting this visit." "I was expecting something like it," I said. "My attorney suggested I get ahead of it. He said people in my situation sometimes find their judgment questioned when they make decisions others find inconvenient." A beat of quiet. Janet Morse picked up her portfolio and her coffee mug. She had drunk half of it and stood up. "The case will be closed as unsubstantiated," she said. "You'll receive written confirmation within 10 business days. Thank you for doing your job thoroughly, Ms. Morse," I said. "I mean that." She paused at the kitchen's doorway and looked back at me with an expression I could not entirely read. "Someone filed that report, Mr. Hayes. I can't tell you who. But whoever it was, they were not acting in your interest." "I know exactly who filed it," I said. "And you're right. They weren't." I walked her to the door and watched her cross the porch and get into the county vehicle parked at the curb. When she pulled away, I went back to the kitchen and picked up my phone and called Raymond. He answered on the first ring. "She came," I said. "I know I just got the system notification." Raymond's voice had an edge of controlled satisfaction in it. "The report is now on official county record. Unsubstantiated welfare check cognitive evaluation on file case closed." A pause. "Walter filing a false report is a criminal offense under New York penal law. Combined with the unauthorized key duplication, the unlicensed entry, and the misrepresentation on the loan application, we now have a documented pattern." I looked out the kitchen window. The sparrows had given up on the empty feeder and gone somewhere else. The maple stood bare and still in the December air. "What does that mean practically?" I said. "It means," Raymond said, "that if they try anything else, anything at all, we are not responding. We are filing." I felt something settle in my chest with a quiet, definitive weight. "Good," I said. "Let's hope they give us the reason." I was reading in Eleanor's chair when the phone rang at 4:19 Friday afternoon. The landline. Not my cell, the landline, the number I kept for doctors and official business and the people who had known me long enough to have it memorized. Only a handful of people called it anymore. Brian was one of them. I picked up on the second ring. "Dad." His voice was different from any version I had heard this week. Not defensive, not rehearsed. Not the careful flatness of a man delivering a message he had agreed to deliver. It was raw in the specific way of someone who has just had the ground shift under them and has not yet found their footing. Did you know Kendra took out a second loan on our house? My hand tightened slightly on the receiver. When did you find out? An hour ago. I heard him exhale a long, unsteady breath. I was looking for the homeowner's insurance documents in the office. I found paperwork in the back of the filing cabinet. A home equity line of credit opened in September. $60,000. My name is on it, Dad. My signature is on it. His voice cracked on the last sentence, not breaking fully but fracturing at the edges, the way wood splinters before it snaps. I asked her what it was for. She said it was for house improvements. I asked her why I didn't know about the details. She said she'd told me. She said I just wasn't paying attention. The December light through the living room window was going amber and thin, the last of the afternoon sun cutting low across the floor. Brian, I said carefully, did you know what the money was actually used for? A pause. No. The word came out tight and certain. I signed something she put in front of me in September. She said it was a refinancing document, better interest rate on the existing mortgage. I didn't read it the way I should have. Another breath. Raymond found it, didn't he? That's what you weren't telling me. I did not deny it. Why didn't you tell me? His voice had shifted, less fractured now, more something that hurt in a cleaner, more directed way. Because you needed to hear it from her, I said. Not from me. If I'd told you, you would have found a reason to explain it. You would have defended her. And you know that's true, Brian. Silence on the line. Not the avoidant silence of a man who couldn't meet my eyes, but the silence of a man sitting with something he recognized and could not dispute. She used the money to pay for the guy who measured your house, he said finally. Not a question. Putting it together himself out loud, the way you work through something that has to be said to become fully real. And for Carol Bennett's preliminary listing work, I said. The sound he made was not quite a word, something between a breath and a syllable that never finished forming. Can I come over? He said. Yes, I said. He arrived 20 minutes later. He did not knock. He rang the bell, which was the right call, and when I opened the door, he came inside without asking and sat down at the kitchen table and put his face in his hands. His shoulders shook once hard and involuntary, the way a man's body registers a blow it has been braced against for too long and has finally taken fully. I sat down across from him and waited. When he lifted his face, his eyes were wet, and his jaw was set in the particular way of a man who is holding himself together by decision rather than by feeling. I keep thinking about Mason and Lily, he said. What they're going to think. What kind of example? He stopped, pressed his lips together. I don't know how to fix this, Dad. I reached into my breast pocket and took out Eleanor's letter for the second time in 2 days. I unfolded it and set it in front of him. He read it. His hands, flat on the table on either side of the paper, were trembling. When he finished, he pressed one palm over the words, the same gesture he had made yesterday, as if he needed to hold the letter down, or it might leave. She wrote this for me too, he said quietly. She wrote it for both of us, I said. I reached across and put my hand over his one brief, firm press, the kind that does not need explaining, and then I stood up and went to the stove and put the kettle on. Some things you cannot fix in an afternoon, but you can sit with them. You can put the kettle on and sit with them until they become something you can carry, rather than something that is carrying you. Brian sat at Eleanor's table with her letter under his hand, and I stood at the stove listening to the water heat, and outside the December dark was coming down soft and early over Maple Drive. Sunday morning, I was watering Eleanor's African violets on the kitchen windowsill when I heard the keypad beep outside. One beep, then silence. Then a second beep, longer this time, the sound of someone pressing harder, as if pressure might change the outcome. Then a third, and the small electronic error tone that meant the code had been rejected and the system had locked out further attempts for 60 seconds. I set the watering can down and dried my hands. Kendra knocked 30 seconds later. Not the professional three-knock rhythm of Janet Morse. Not the desperate pounding from Thursday. Something in between, controlled, deliberate, the knock of a woman who had decided that composure was the only currency she had left and intended to spend it carefully. I walked to the door and opened it. She was alone. No Brian, no leather portfolio, no color-coded documents. She was dressed simply, her hair pulled back, and she looked for the first time since I had known her like someone who had not slept well in several days. There were shadows under her eyes that her usual precision had not been able to fully conceal. For a fraction of a second, something in me registered that as human. Then I remembered the notebook with primary suite written at the top of the page, and the fraction passed. "Walter," she said. Her voice was measured, careful. The voice she used when she needed something and knew that asking directly would not work. "I think we got off on the wrong foot. If you'd just sit down with me for an hour." "Kendra," I said. "There's nothing to sit down about." Her jaw tightened slightly. "You're punishing Brian and the children because of a misunderstanding." "Ma, this was never a misunderstanding," I said. "You prepared a listing for my home. You had someone measure my bedroom. You duplicated my keys without permission. You borrowed against your own house to pay for it. Those are not misunderstandings. Those are decisions." Something moved across her face, a flash of calculation, assessing how much I knew and whether denial still had any utility. She found her answer quickly. It didn't. She shifted. "Mason and Lily need stability, Walter. Whatever you think of me, those children have a college fund," I said. "Fully funded. Paid directly to their institution when they're ready. They are taken care of. They were always going to be taken care of." I looked at her steadily. "It's your lifestyle that isn't protected. That's a different problem, and it's yours to solve." Kendra's eyes went sharp. "Brian will come around. He always does." The words landed with a particular dullness, not because they were false, but because I recognized them as the operating assumption of a woman who had built an entire life on the reliability of a man's willingness to capitulate. "That's exactly the problem, Kendra," I said. "My son spent 15 years coming around to whatever you decided. That ends now not because of me, but because he's finally choosing to." She stared at me. I watched her search my face for the things she had always found before: the hesitation, the guilt, the reflexive need to smooth things over, to keep the peace, to be the father who fixed whatever his son had broken. She looked for it the way you look for a door in a wall that no longer has one. She did not find it. Her chin lifted slightly. "One last attempt, quiet and cold. You'll regret this, Kendra." I said, "I regret a lot of things. The years I wrote checks without asking what they were teaching Brian about what I was worth. The times I covered for consequences he should have felt. The Thanksgiving dinners I hosted when I should have had a different conversation entirely." I held her gaze. "This isn't one of them." She held my gaze for 3 more seconds. Then she turned and walked down the porch steps with her back straight and her face forward, the walk of a woman who would not give anyone the satisfaction of watching her expression change. I watched her reach her car. She did not look back. The engine started. The car backed out of the driveway and moved down Maple Drive and turned the corner and was gone, I stood in the doorway for a moment, after the sound of the engine faded, one hand resting on the door frame, feeling the cold December air move past me into the house. Then I stepped back inside and closed the door. I turned the deadbolt with a clean, unhurried click. In the kitchen, Eleanor's African violets sat on the windowsill in a row, their small purple flowers vivid against the pale December light. I picked up the watering can and finished what I had started. The house was quiet, not the heavy waiting quiet of the past 2 weeks, the quiet that had sat in every room like something unresolved pressing against the walls. This was different. This was the quiet of a house that knew who it belonged to. I had not taken my life back with a fight. I had simply closed a door that should have been closed years ago, and the silence on the other side of it felt for the first time in longer than I could remember entirely like mine. December settled over Long Island, the way it always did gradually, and then all at once the temperature dropping 10 degrees overnight. The bare trees going from gray to white when the first real snow came through the second week of the month and left 2 inches on everything. I refilled the bird feeder the morning after the snow. It seemed like the right time. The weeks after Kendra's last visit were quieter than I had expected and busier than I had planned, which turned out to be exactly what I needed. I started on the house, not the renovations Kendra had sketched in her notebook. Not farmhouse sinks or quartz countertops or primary suites, but the smaller, more honest work of a man reclaiming a space that had always been his. Eleanor's favorite room had been the small bedroom at the end of the hall, the one with the southeast window that caught the morning light first. For 3 years, it had held boxes, spare furniture, the accumulated overflow of a house where too many people had felt entitled to store their things. I cleared it completely in a single afternoon, repainted it the pale yellow Eleanor had always wanted, and moved in 2 bookshelves and the reading chair from the living room. I filled the shelves with her books arranged by color, the way she had always meant to do and never quite gotten around to. The garage became mine again in a different way. I pulled the Craftsman mower project back to the center of the floor, organized the tool wall the way I liked it, and spent 3 evenings that first week with my hands inside an engine that had no opinion about inheritance law or real estate values or what a 60-year-old man was supposed to need. It was the best 3 evenings I had spent in months. Frank came for dinner on a Friday, the first of what became a weekly arrangement. Him and Susan, and occasionally 1 or 2 others from the old days at Garrison Mechanical, sitting around the dining room table with food and no agenda. The table that had held Kendra's spreadsheets held pot roast and sourdough bread, and the specific comfortable noise of people who had known each other long enough to disagree without consequence. Eleanor would have loved it. Mason and Lily came on weekends, the schedule unchanged. I picked them up Saturday morning, brought them back Sunday evening, and in between we did the things we had always done, cooked together, walked to the park, watched something on the television that Mason picked and Lily tolerated with theatrical patience. They did not ask about their parents' situation, which told me Brian and Kendra had been careful about what they said at home, and I was grateful for that much. I did not ask either. Brian stopped by twice during those weeks, both times without calling ahead, both times in the early evening, both times with the same slightly tentative quality. A man who was not sure of his welcome and was showing up anyway, which I thought was probably the right instinct even if the timing was still uncertain between us. We talked about the mower project the first time, about Mason's soccer league the second. We did not talk about Kendra or spreadsheets or the certified mail or any of it. That was all right. There would be time. Frank mentioned midway through the second Friday dinner that a mutual acquaintance from the old neighborhood near Brian's house had mentioned seeing Brian's car parked outside his own house several nights running engine off, just sitting there in the dark. The acquaintance had wondered if everything was okay. Frank said it the way he said things he thought I needed to know, but was not sure I wanted to hear. I listened and nodded and did not ask for details. Some things find their own resolution without anyone pushing them toward it. The third Friday dinner, I refilled the bird feeder before everyone arrived and stood at the kitchen window, watching 3 sparrows and a cardinal work through the fresh seed while the December dark came down outside. The kitchen smelled like pot roast, and the rosemary Eleanor had always grown in the small pot on the windowsill. I had kept it alive, which I considered something of an achievement. Susan brought pie. Frank brought the good coffee he ordered from a place in Vermont that Eleanor had introduced him to 15 years ago. We sat at the table and ate and talked and laughed at something Frank said that was only moderately funny, but landed perfectly in the particular warmth of that particular evening. Afterward, washing dishes, I looked out at Maple Drive in the dark. The street was quiet, the houses lit from inside the maple in the backyard, holding its snow-covered branches against the winter sky, exactly the way it had held them every December for 35 years. A car I half recognized turned onto the street and slowed as it approached the house, then kept going. I watched the taillights until they disappeared around the curve. Then I dried my hands and went back to the table where Frank was still talking, and I sat down and poured myself another cup of Eleanor's coffee and let the evening be what it was. It was a Friday evening late in December when I looked out the kitchen window and saw him. Brian was sitting on the bottom porch step with his elbows on his knees and his head down his breath, making small clouds in the cold air. He had not knocked. He had not rung the bell. He had simply driven here and sat down on the steps, the way a man sits when he has run out of other places to be. I dried my hands on the dish towel and stood at the window for a moment, looking at the shape of my son in the December dark. Then I walked to the front door and opened it. He heard the door and looked up. His eyes were red at the rims, and his face carried the particular exhaustion of someone who had been making difficult decisions for weeks and had finally arrived at the most difficult one. I stepped to the side and held the door open without saying anything. He came in. He sat at the kitchen table, the same chair he had always used, the same table, the same kitchen, and he pressed both hands flat on the surface and looked at them the way a man looks at things that are familiar when everything else has shifted. "Kendra and I are separating," he said. "I did not say I told you so. I did not say I saw this coming. I did not say anything for a moment because some things deserve a moment before words arrive and diminish them. I went to the stove and poured 2 cups of coffee from the pot I had made an hour ago. I set one in front of Brian and sat down across from him with the other and wrapped both hands around the warmth of it. "How are Mason and Lily?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "Scared," he said. "Confused. I've been sleeping in the spare room for 2 weeks." He looked up. "She changed the locks last Tuesday." The specific irony of that landed quietly between us, and I saw Brian register it too, a brief, humorless flicker across his face that acknowledged the symmetry without finding it funny. "They're going to be okay," I said. "The kids. They're going to be okay because you're going to make sure of it." Brian nodded slowly, the nod of a man accepting a responsibility rather than a comfort. We sat for a while. The coffee cooled slightly. Outside, the snow that had started falling an hour ago was coming down in the particular unhurried way of a December snow that has decided it has all night. "I keep thinking about what Mom wrote," Brian said quietly. "About building your own life, not expecting someone else to fund it." He looked at his cup. "I think I've been doing the wrong version of that for a long time." "You know that now," I said. "That's not nothing." He nodded again. From the hallway came the sound of Mason and Lily. They had arrived Saturday morning, and were staying through the holiday, their laughter carrying from the back room where they had claimed the floor with a board game. Neither of them fully understood, but both insisted they were winning. Brian listened to the sound of his children laughing in his father's house, and something in his face went quiet and full, at the same time the expression of a man counting what he still had, rather than what he had lost. Frank came for dinner the following evening, and after the meal we sat at the table with our coffee, and Frank asked whether I had ever thought about selling the house and going somewhere new, starting fresh somewhere warmer. I looked at Eleanor's photograph on the shelf above the fireplace. "No," I said. Frank nodded. He had not expected a different answer. "They said they were ready to receive their inheritance," I said. Like I was already gone. "But I'm 60 years old, Frank." I turned the coffee cup slowly in my hands. "I'm not gone, so there's nothing to inherit yet." From the back room, Mason laughed at something bright and sudden and entirely unguarded, the laugh of a child who does not yet know enough to hold anything back. I looked at the table where 3 color-coded spreadsheets had once been laid out on Eleanor's good tablecloth, and I thought about everything that had happened since that Thursday night in November. And I thought about the note in my breast pocket that Eleanor had written when her hands were tired and her time was running short. I had not taken my life back with a fight. I had simply stopped letting other people decide what it was worth. The snow kept falling on Maple Drive. The house was warm and lit from within, the way houses are when the right people are inside them. I poured Frank another cup of coffee and let the evening settle around us like something that had always belonged here. I spent 60 years learning that love is not the same as surrender. For too long I confused the two. I thought giving without limits was what good fathers did. I thought keeping the peace was the same as keeping the family. I was wrong, and by the time I understood the difference, someone had already measured my bedroom for renovation. If there is one thing I would tell anyone watching this, do not wait until someone places a spreadsheet on your table to understand your own worth. God gives us this life once. The home you built, the years you spent, the love you gave freely. None of that makes you obligated to disappear quietly for someone else's convenience. This is what family justice truly means. Not punishment, not revenge, but the quiet, dignified decision to stop funding your own erasure. I have seen too many family situations that never needed to become battles at all. These are the quiet stories family members rarely speak about, the ones that begin with a boundary instead of a fight. They only needed that boundary set clearly before the damage ran too deep. My opinion, for what it is worth, family justice begins the moment you decide your life still belongs to you. If this story stayed with you, if you recognized something in it or someone you love, share it with them. Leave a comment below and tell me what you would have done differently. And if you want more stories about dignity, loyalty, and the people who test both, subscribe so you never miss one. Thank you for staying with me until the end. The stories that follow contain fictional elements created entirely for reflection and education. If this type of content is not for you, I respect that completely. Please feel free to explore other content that better suits you.